Part 1. The Hill. There is a hill at the edge of a small city that nobody has gotten around to developing. This is not for lack of trying. The hill has been surveyed several times by people with theodolites and clipboards, and the particular expression of professionals who have been asked to assess something and are already privately certain it won't work out. The surveys have produced reports. The reports have been filed. The hill remains a hill, unimproved, which in this context means covered in long grass and the kind of low, determined scrub that establishes itself wherever humans have decided not to, and which always looks somehow like it knew this was going to happen and prepared accordingly. At the top of the hill, there is a building. The building is not large. It is 1 story, circular, with walls of the same pale stone as the hill itself, so that from a distance, on the occasions when it is visible from a distance, which is not every night, for reasons that will become apparent, it reads less as a structure than as a slightly more deliberate arrangement of the hillside. The roof is a dome. The dome is made of glass, or something that functions as glass, dark and slightly convex, and on clear nights it reflects the sky back at itself with a fidelity that makes it difficult to tell, from certain angles, where the dome ends and the actual sky begins. This is the Observatory of Quiet Thoughts. It is not a famous observatory. It does not have a gift shop. It has not been written about in any publication that a person would encounter by accident, and the one article that did appear about it in a regional magazine in 2003 contained 3 factual errors and a photograph of the wrong building, and was never corrected because the magazine folded before anyone got around to it. The person who runs the observatory is named Callum. Callum does not have a title. He considered several: director, keeper, chief astronomer, and found each of them slightly more than the situation called for. He answers to Callum, which he has always felt is sufficient. The path up the hill begins at a wooden gate. The gate is the kind of gate that opens when you push it and stays open, because its hinge has developed a preference for the open position after years of defaulting to it. A small printed card is attached to the gate post with 2 drawing pins, and the card says, in plain type, Observatory, top of path. Mind the 3rd step. C. The path is not steep, but it is uneven. The grass on either side long enough to brush your legs as you pass. The city behind you, its lights, its ambient hum, the particular texture of noise that cities produce even at this hour, a sound that is not any one thing, but the sum of 10,000 things at a low and continuous volume, recedes as you climb. Not dramatically. It doesn't switch off. It simply becomes more distant, more general, more like weather than like something directed at you personally. The 3rd step is a stone that sits slightly higher than the ones around it. You navigate it without incident. Someone before you did not, and their experience is presumably why Callum felt the note was necessary. The hill at night has its own atmosphere. The grass moves in a wind that you can feel on your face, but that is not cold. The particular temperature of air that has been warm during the day and is releasing that warmth now, slowly, into the dark. The smell of it is green and dry and faintly sweet, in the way of grass at night, a smell that belongs to open spaces and the absence of buildings and the specific quality of being outside at an hour when most people are inside. Above you, the sky. On a night like tonight, the sky above the hill is doing what skies do when there is no cloud and the city's light is far enough away to matter, which is to say, it is full, properly full, in the way that sky is full when you give it your actual attention rather than the peripheral glance it usually receives. The stars are not dramatic about this. They don't perform. They are simply there in their enormous, patient quantity, the ones that are bright enough to register individually and the ones that are not, but that together produce the faint, general luminosity of the sky's background, the deep texture of it that the eye finds when it has stopped looking for specific things and started just receiving. You do not need to know any of the names. The names are Callum's department, and he takes a relaxed approach to sharing them. The observatory is larger than it looked from the bottom of the hill. Buildings often are when you arrive at them on foot. The approach compresses things, and then you are there, and the walls are taller, and the dome is broader, and the pale stone is right in front of you, with its specific texture, rough in some places, and smoothed in others where hands have rested against it over the years. There is one window, small, set to the left of the door, and through it, a warm light is visible, amber, low, the kind of light that is chosen deliberately. The door is wood, old, with an iron handle that has been worn smooth at the grip. There is no bell. There is no sign saying to knock or not to knock. There is, on a small wooden shelf to the right of the door, a mug of something hot, steam rising from it in a thin, steady thread. The mug has a small folded note leaning against it. The note says, "For you. Doors open. Come in when you're ready. Take your time with the mug. See. Take your time with the mug." It is warm in both hands, the kind of warmth that asks the hands to simply hold it and do nothing else, and the hands, presented with this single clear instruction, comply. The steam rises and disperses. The smell is something herbal. Not tea exactly. Not any specific tea you could name. Something quieter than that. Something that smells the way the inside of a warm building smells when you are still outside it. The view from the top of the hill with the mug at this hour is the following. The city below, its light spread across the low ground in a pattern that from up here looks deliberate, though you know it isn't. Just the accumulated consequence of 1,000 separate decisions about where to put things, which have produced, from this angle and this distance, something that resembles a plan. The low hills to the north and east, dark, their ridgelines a slightly deeper black against the sky's dark blue. And above everything, continuous, the sky with its patient population of light. The mug warms your hands. The grass moves at your feet. There is no particular hurry. Inside, the observatory is one circular room. The floor is stone, the same pale stone as the walls, covered in the center by a large round rug of deep red that has faded in places to something closer to rust. The rug is the warmest thing in the room, and the room is quite warm, which gives you a sense of what the rug was like originally. 4 low chairs are arranged near the center, not in a precise circle, not with any formal geometry, but in the approximate arrangement of chairs that have been moved around many times by people trying to get comfortable and have settled over time into positions that work. In the middle of the rug, a small iron stove. Its door is glass, and through the glass, a fire is visible, burning low. The stage of a fire that has been going for several hours and has settled into its own deep rhythm, a slow, steady combustion that produces more warmth than light. The logs, having been reduced to a structure of red and orange that glows steadily without any of the earlier drama of flame. It makes a sound, faintly. The soft, occasional tick of metal expanding, the almost inaudible breath of combustion, sounds that you feel as much as hear, a low and continuous warmth in the acoustic texture of the room. Along the curved wall, a wooden bench, not the kind for sitting, but a workbench, long and low, scattered with the evidence of Callum's work, notebooks, a few printed charts with handwritten annotations in the margins, 2 pencils and a pen, a pair of binoculars, several mugs in various stages of use, a jar of something that is either a preservative or a science project, and has been there long enough that the distinction no longer matters. And above everything, the dome. The dome is the point of the building, in the sense that the building was constructed around it, for it, because of it. From inside, the glass is nearly transparent. Whatever gives it its dark convexity from outside is not apparent from in here, and the sky above is simply the sky, close, framed by the circular rim of the dome's edge and the pale walls below it, available in a way that sky is not usually available when you are inside a building. Tonight, the sky through the dome is doing what it was doing outside, but concentrated, contained within the circle of the dome's frame, so that it becomes a deliberate thing, a skylight that is also a statement, a window that looks at something enormous and presents it at a scale the eye can manage, can hold, can rest against, without being overwhelmed by the full extent of it. Callum is at the workbench, back to you, making a note in one of his notebooks. He is a tall man who has developed, through years of looking through eyepieces and bending over workbenches, a slight forward lean that is simply the shape he is now, the way tall people who spend time looking at small things often are. His hair is the unspecific grey of someone who stopped tracking its transition at some point and simply arrived here. His jumper is dark green and has a small hole near the left elbow that he is aware of but not bothered by. He finishes his note, puts the pen down. "Good mug," he says, without turning around. "Good mug," you say, or don't say. Either is fine. The question was not really a question. He turns. He has a face that defaulted early to a pleasant, settled expression, and has stayed there. The kind of face that looks as though it has spent a lot of time doing something it found worthwhile, and the worthwhileness has accumulated in the lines of it. The Perseid remnants are still showing, he says, in the tone of someone noting something that is good news, but not urgent. Nothing dramatic, just a few. They've been coming through all week. He says this the way he presumably says everything, steadily, without inflation, at a pace that suggests the words will get there when they get there, and there is no reason to rush them along. Then he pulls one of the low chairs slightly toward the center of the rug, not quite pointing it anywhere specific, and returns to his notebook. The invitation is clear enough. Sit. The chair is low, and the cushion on it has been compressed by use into something that is no longer soft so much as perfectly fitted to the general shape of a person sitting, which you are, and which means it receives you without any of the preliminary negotiation of a new surface. Your weight goes into it, and the chair accepts the weight, and the matter is settled. Above you, the dome. Above the dome, the sky. The fire in the iron stove breathes its slow breath, and the warmth of it reaches you from across the rug, and the mug is still faintly warm from the outside, even though you set it down somewhere, on the arm of the chair, or the floor beside it, or somewhere. It will be fine. Callum's pen moves across the notebook page, stops, moves again. The sky through the dome is very still, the way the sky is always still, because it is not still at all, but is so large that the motion within it is imperceptible from here, and imperceptible motion and stillness are, from the inside of a warm, circular room on top of a hill, the same thing. A light crosses the dome. Slow, steady, unblinking. A satellite, traveling its fixed path with the mechanical patience of something that has no opinion about its own trajectory. It crosses the circle of the dome from one edge to the other in approximately 20 seconds. And then it is gone, and the dome is as it was. Callum doesn't look up. That one's been coming over at this time all month, he says, regular as anything. He makes a small note, returns to whatever he was already doing. The fire ticks. The grass outside moves against the base of the wall in its low, continuous whisper. You are at the top of a hill, inside a dome, under the sky, in a chair that fits, next to a fire that has been burning for hours. There is genuinely nothing to do. Part 2. What the Observatory collects. Callum closes his notebook. He doesn't put it away. He just closes it and sets it on the workbench beside him and turns to face the dome with his hands in his lap, in the posture of someone who has finished one thing and is not yet starting another and is comfortable in the interval. He looks up through the glass at the sky in the particular way he looks at it, which is not the intense, narrowed scrutiny of someone searching for something, but the open, receptive attention of someone who has learned that the sky will show you more if you don't demand anything specific from it. You'll probably start noticing them soon, he says. He is not looking at you. He is looking at the dome. People do, usually, after about 20 minutes, sometimes longer. Depends on the person, depends on the night. A pause. Depends on how much they brought with them. You follow his gaze upward. The dome is as it was, the sky through the glass, the stars in their patient arrangement, the deep blue-black of the space between them. But you look now with the specific attention his words have produced, the slight alertness of someone who has been told there is something to notice. And so, there, moving slowly across the upper left quadrant of the dome, at about the pace of the satellite that crossed earlier but lower and less certain in its path, is a small light that is not a star. It is dimmer than the satellite was, and warmer in color. Not the cold white of reflected sunlight off metal, but something more amber, more interior, the color of something that generates its own light rather than borrowing it. And its path is not straight. It curves slightly, corrects, curves again, in the way of something that is drifting rather than orbiting, that is subject to currents rather than fixed trajectories. It fades before it reaches the far edge of the dome. That one's been circling for a while, Callum says. Came in about a week ago. Hasn't found its way back yet. You look at him. He looks at the dome. Thoughts, he says, simply, as though this explains it, which, slowly, in the way that things make sense in certain rooms at certain hours, it does. The Observatory of Quiet Thoughts does not observe the night sky in the conventional sense. Or it does. Callum does look at the night sky, genuinely, with care and consistency, and his notebooks are full of legitimate astronomical observation made over many years of this particular hill at this particular latitude. But the dome has a secondary function, which Callum did not design and does not entirely understand, and has been recording with the same methodical patience he brings to everything else since the first night he noticed it 11 years ago, when a light crossed the dome that was not on any chart and moved with a quality that no satellite or aircraft or known atmospheric phenomenon quite accounted for. He spent 3 weeks looking for an alternative explanation. He is a thorough person. At the end of the 3 weeks, he opened a new notebook, wrote miscellaneous on the cover with a felt tip, and started recording what he saw. The current count is 11 notebooks. The felt tip was the same one. It lasted until notebook 7, which Callum found quietly impressive. They come in through the dome, he says, on nights when the sky is clear and the wind is from the east. Not always, not reliably, but often enough that I've stopped being surprised by it. He picks up the binoculars from the workbench and offers them in your direction. You can see them better with these, if you want, though some people find them easier without. Take the binoculars, or don't. What you can see without them, now that you know what you're looking for. 2 more lights in the dome, both small, both moving with that same quality of drift, unhurried, slightly uncertain of direction, following some principle of movement that is not gravity and not wind, but something else, something that the dome seems to create the conditions for, the way a warm room creates the conditions for a cat to fall asleep. The lights are not dramatic. They do not pulse or flash or behave in any way that would read from a distance as anything other than faint atmospheric anomalies. Up close, through the binoculars, if you take them, they have a character that is harder to describe, a kind of interiority, if light can have interiority, the sense of something that is not performing its existence, but simply existing. Quiet thoughts, Callum says. That's what I call them. Not because I know that's what they are, just because it's what they remind me of, the ones you have when you're nearly asleep or just waking up. The ones that don't quite finish themselves, the ones you can't hold on to. He pauses. They end up here, some of them. The fire ticks in its iron stove. You are looking at the dome with a different quality of attention than you were 5 minutes ago. Not more intense, but more open. The eyes relaxed and receptive in the way that eyes become when they have accepted that what they are looking for will not be found by looking harder. The dome frames its circle of sky, and the stars hold their positions, and the lights, 3 of them now, or 4, it's difficult to be certain at this scale, move in their unhurried, uncertain way through the upper dark of the glass. It is not unsettling. This is the thing about the Observatory of Quiet Thoughts that is difficult to convey in advance and obvious once you are in it. The lights are not strange in the way that unexplained things are usually strange. They do not produce the specific discomfort of the unknown. They produce something closer to recognition. The mild, slightly tired recognition of something you knew without knowing you knew. The feeling of a word supplied for a thing you'd been describing around for years. Of course, you think. Or something like thinking. Of course, they go somewhere. Most of them pass through, Callum says. He has picked up his pen again, but is not writing, just holding it. They come in, they drift around for a bit, sometimes hours, sometimes just a few minutes, and then they go back out, through the dome, back up. He gestures vaguely upward. Where they go after that I don't know. Back, presumably, or somewhere else. And the ones that don't pass through? He looks at the shelf along the curved wall. You look at the shelf. There are, you now notice, objects on it that you didn't register before, or registered as part of the general clutter of the workbench and dismissed. But they are not on the workbench. They are arranged with some care along the lower shelf below the workbench's surface, each one sitting in a small, shallow dish of the kind used for laboratory samples, and each dish is labeled in Callum's handwriting with a date and a brief note. The objects themselves are difficult to describe with precision. They are small. The largest is perhaps the size of a marble, the smallest barely visible. They are not quite solid, and not quite not solid. They have the quality of something that has been moving for a long time and has come to rest, but retains in its stillness the memory of motion, the way a spinning top that has fallen on its side still carries, in the slight warmth of it, the fact of what it was doing before. They give off, very faintly, a light that is the same amber warmth as the lights in the dome. The ones that stay, Callum says. Stay. I don't know why some do and some don't. I haven't found a pattern. He doesn't seem troubled by this. I just keep them. You get up from the chair. The rug is soft under your feet as you cross to the shelf. The fire's warmth reaches you more directly here, on this side of the room. You crouch to look at the dishes. The nearest label reads 14th March, approximately 2 a.m. Came in low, stayed close to the wall for an hour. Would not approach. Left this behind when it went. The dish contains something the size of a small pebble. That is not a pebble. The next, 6th August, earlier evening than usual. Unusual color, more blue than amber. Settled on the workbench. Stayed 3 nights. That dish's object is so small that the label is larger than what it describes. You don't touch them. It doesn't feel like something you should do without being invited to. But you look without agenda, without the pressure of time, just looking at small things that have settled in a place that was ready to receive them. Do you know whose they are? You ask. Callum considers this. I think they're everyone's, he says. I think by the time they get here, that question has stopped being relevant. Return to the chair. The cushion receives you the same way it did before, and the fire is the same fire, and the dome above is the same dome, though the lights within it have shifted. The ones you were tracking have moved to different positions, following whatever logic moves them. And there may be new ones you haven't identified yet. The sky beyond them is the same deep blue-black with its undiminished population of stars. It occurs to you, sitting here, that this might be where certain thoughts go. Not the important ones, not the thoughts that carry names and dates and the weight of real consequence, but the others, the ones that arrive at the edge of sleep and don't quite resolve. The question you woke at 3 in the morning with and couldn't recover by morning. The thing you were on the verge of understanding on the bus and then lost when someone sat down next to you and the understanding folded itself away. The almost thoughts, the peripheral ones, the ones that didn't quite make it. Perhaps they make it here instead. And perhaps this is the part that is harder to hold, but that the room and the fire and the dome's patient amber lights seem to be suggesting. Perhaps that is fine. Perhaps the thought that drifted away from you at 2 in the morning on a Tuesday is here, in a small dish on a low shelf, labeled in careful handwriting, kept. Perhaps it is enough that it exists somewhere, even if the somewhere is not you. Callum is writing again. The satellite that came over earlier, or a different one, at this point there is no way to know, crosses the dome from east to west in its 20 seconds of transit and disappears. One of the amber lights drifts toward the lower edge of the dome, slows, and holds there for a moment at the rim of the glass, at the border between inside and outside, the way something pauses when it is deciding. Then it crosses back upward, back into the dome, back into the warm interior dark of the observatory, where the fire is burning and Callum is keeping his notes and the shelf holds its small dishes, and you are in your chair with the rug beneath your feet, looking up. Good night for it, Callum says. He is not talking about the stars. The fire breathes, the lights drift. Above the hill, above the dome, above everything, the sky continues its enormous and unhurried business, indifferent and magnificent and full, in ways that no chart has fully accounted for, of things still making their way home. Part 3. The later hours and after. At some point, Callum makes more tea. You hear it rather than see it. The small sounds from the corner of the room where a kettle apparently lives among the notebooks and charts. The particular sequence of fill and click and wait that is the same in every room where it happens, and that produces, in most people, a response that is less about tea and more about what tea means at this hour in a warm room, which is that someone is taking care of something, that the next few minutes are accounted for, that the world has contracted to this radius. The rug, the fire, the dome, the kettle, and the contraction is not a loss, but a relief. He sets a mug on the floor beside your chair without interrupting whatever state you are in, which he correctly identifies as one that should not be interrupted. The mug is the same as the one on the shelf outside, chipped somewhere, warm. The lights in the dome have changed while you weren't tracking them. This is the nature of not tracking things. They change, and when you return your attention to them, the change has already happened, and what you find is simply the new arrangement, with no access to the transition. There are more lights than before, or the same lights in different positions, or different lights entirely. At this point, the distinction has blurred in the same way that other distinctions have blurred over the course of the evening, the way the edge between thinking and not thinking has blurred, and the edge between watching the dome and simply being in the room with the dome above you. The lights move. You watch them with the soft, unfocused attention that the observatory seems to produce in people, not the sharp tracking of something that might escape, but the open receive of someone who is not trying to catch or keep or understand, just watching the way you watch a fire, the way the eye follows movement without gripping it, the way attention can be present without being effortful. One light is moving more slowly than the others. It is in the upper right of the dome, drifting with even less certainty of direction than the ones you noticed earlier, pausing every so often in a way that makes it seem less like drifting and more like considering. It has the quality of something very nearly at rest. Several times it slows to a near stop and hangs in the dome's upper dark for long enough that you begin to think it has settled. And then it shifts again, slightly, and continues its uncertain passage. Callum is watching it too. "That one's tired," he says. He says it without sentiment, the way you'd note the weather or the time, an observation rather than an interpretation. He picks up his pen and writes something brief in the notebook, sets the pen down. "They slow down like that sometimes," he says. "The ones that have been traveling a long time. You can usually tell. The color goes a bit warmer. The movement loses its..." He pauses, looking for the word. "Its query." They stop asking where they're going and just go. The light in the upper right of the dome has nearly stopped. It sits in the dark glass, warm and dim, still and almost still, at the very edge of whatever it means for a light like this to rest. "Will it stay?" you ask. Callum looks at it for a moment. "Might do," he says. I'll know by morning. He says it without investment either way, not hoping it stays, not hoping it goes, simply prepared to record what happens, as he has recorded what happened on every previous night in 11 notebooks. Because recording what happens is what he does, and he has long since stopped needing it to mean more than that. There is something in this attitude that the room seems to have absorbed and now emits at a low frequency, a quality of acceptance that is not resignation, nothing defeated in it, nothing that has given up on things mattering, just the long practiced equanimity of someone who has spent years watching things he doesn't fully understand and has found that not fully understanding them has not diminished the experience of watching. The light holds its position. The fire breathes. The tea is the same as the tea from the mug outside. The same herbal quiet, the same warmth, the thing that is not quite any tea you could name. You hold the mug with both hands and look up at the dome, and the distinction between the amber of the mug's warmth and the amber of the lights above has softened to the point where they feel like the same warmth at different distances. Close your eyes, if they want to close. The dome is still there with your eyes closed. The fire is still there. Callum is still at the workbench, or has moved to one of the other chairs. You're not certain, and certainty on this point is not something you require. He is in the room, which is enough. The observatory is on the hill, which is enough. The hill is at the edge of the city, which continues below in its mild and distant hum. Its lights spread across the low ground in their unplanned pattern, going about the business of being a city at this hour, which is the same as always, but quieter. The sounds of the room arrive without urgency. The tick of the stove, the faint movement of the grass outside against the base of the pale stone wall, its low, continuous whisper. Callum's pen occasionally, the almost sound of the lights in the dome, which you may or may not actually be hearing, which may be something the room produces or something the mind produces in the absence of other things to produce, a faint ambient warmth at the very edge of audibility, the sound of something that has nearly stopped looking for where it's going. Think about this, or don't. But if you do, consider the thought you lost last week, the one at the edge of sleep, or in the shower, or on the bus, the one that had the quality of mattering, that arrived with the brief, clear feeling of something understood, and then was gone before you could fix it in place. The thought that left no trace except the faint awareness that it had been there. Look at the dome. It is possible, not certain, not provable, but possible in the way that things are possible inside a circular room of pale stone on top of a hill at this hour of night, that it is here, that it came in on a clear night with an easterly wind and drifted through the glass and has been moving slowly through the dome's upper dark, warmer and slower than when it arrived, losing the urgency of its unfinished question, settling. It is possible that some of what you see above you is yours. There is no way to know which part. This is, somehow, not a problem. Callum sets down his pen for what feels like the last time tonight. He does not announce this. There is no ceremony to it. The pen simply goes down with the small sound of a thing that has done enough for one evening, and he sits back in whatever chair he is in, and he looks up at the dome the way he has looked at it every night for 11 years. Not for the first time, not with the accumulated weight of 11 years of looking, making it feel like less than it was, but simply and directly, as though the dome and the sky beyond it are what they are, and that is more than sufficient. The lights drift. The slow one in the upper right has stopped moving entirely now. It sits in the dark glass, like something that has arrived without knowing it was arriving, the way sleep arrives, not as an event with a clear beginning, but as the realization that something has already happened, that the decision was made somewhere back in the sequence without your noticing, and what remains is simply the fact of it. Is it the same light you were watching before? There is no way to know. It may have moved and returned. It may be something that came in while your eyes were closed. The dome does not keep that kind of record, and Callum's notebook only records what Callum sees. And Callum, like you, was not watching every moment. Some moments are not watched. They happen anyway. The fire has reduced itself further. The logs are mostly structure now, the shape of what they were, glowing at their edges with a deep, steady red that produces more warmth than it did an hour ago, or seems to, the way warmth seems more present when the room has been accumulating it for long enough. The glass door of the stove frames the glow in its small rectangle, and from the chair, the rectangle of red and the circle of the dome are the two lit things in your field of vision. And they are both amber, and they are both steady, and they are both the kind of thing the eyes rest against rather than examine. Let your eyes rest. The dome above is full of its quiet traffic, its lights in their unhurried passage, its stars in their fixed and ancient positions, behind and between and beyond everything else. The glass holds it all at one remove, close enough to feel immediate, far enough to feel safe. The sky is enormous, and you are in a warm room looking at it through a dome of glass on top of a hill, which is exactly the right ratio of enormous to manageable. Callum says something low, to himself, or to the room, or to the notebook. You don't catch it. It doesn't matter. It is the sound of someone at ease in their work and their place, which is one of the most restful sounds available. Not because it requires anything from you, but precisely because it doesn't. Your breath is slow. You know this without attending to it. It is simply the state of things, the way the temperature of the room is the state of things, present and settled, and not requiring comment. The slow light in the dome has not moved. You look at it for a long time, or what feels like a long time, or what is simply the duration that passes when you are looking at something without keeping track of the looking, when the thing and the looking at it have become continuous, undivided, the same event. Then, at some point that you will not be able to locate afterward, you stop looking. Not because the light has gone, not because anything has changed in the room, just because the looking has completed itself, the way a breath completes itself, and what comes after is not an absence, but a different kind of presence. the presence of a room you are in with your eyes not open, a dome above you holding its lights in the dark, a fire at the edge of warmth, a hill beneath a sky that is doing what it has always done and will continue to do, enormous and patient and indifferent and full. Callum is still there. His pen is still on the workbench. The notebooks hold their 11 years of careful observation, the transits and the drifters and the ones that stayed, the dates and the brief notes, the felt tip that lasted 7 volumes and the one that replaced it. All of it recorded without conclusion, because there is no conclusion, because the observatory does not resolve what it observes, only notes it, only keeps it, only maintains the conditions under which things that have been drifting for a long time might find, for a while, somewhere warm to be still. You are one of those things tonight. The dome holds you too in its way. The fire ticks. The hill is quiet. The sky above is what it always is. The same sky that was there before the observatory, before the hill was a hill anyone had named, before there were thoughts to drift from the people who had them into the warm amber dark of a glass dome on a clear night with the wind from the east. The same sky that will be there after. Let it be there. Let the lights in the dome drift where they drift. Let Callum keep his notes. Let the fire do what fires do in the long hours after midnight, when the room is warm enough and the people in it have stopped needing anything from it, when it can simply burn at its own slow pace and the room can be what it is, and the hill can hold the room and the sky can hold the hill, and everything can be for the duration of a breath and the pause that follows it and the next breath and the pause that follows that, completely and quietly fine. Somewhere in the dome above you, a light goes still. Callum notes the time, and the observatory continues its patient, circular night.